don't know how, it's probably about an hour or 2 hour drive at
least. We are staying at Wizard Hat, and is it Bangor? Oh, my arm's getting better. Just doesn't want to move very well.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the time and the place for the regular board meeting of the Marshalltown Community School District. It's May 1, 2023. Welcome to those of you joining us here in the boardroom. Welcome as well to anybody tuning in and watching via the live stream or watching later on at their leisure. We'll do introductions of the board members here this evening. We'll start to my left, Karina Hernandez and Leah Stanley. To my right, Zach Wall and Bonnie Lowry. Joining me here at the center table, we have Dr. Theron Schutte, the Superintendent of Schools, Randy Denham, our Board Secretary, and I am Sean Heitman. We also have two of our student board members here this evening. That's not the right name plaque.
What's that?
Abraham's way at the end.
Yeah, Abraham's clear at the end. Abraham Madrigal Farias and Yesenia Alvarez Zamora are here this evening. I know Natalie's playing soccer and Jackson's probably playing tennis or something like that. Couple other housekeeping items. We've got a pink sign-up sheet for anybody who's here for public comment. If you have anything you want to speak to the board about, sign up there. You'll be given 5 minutes to address the board. Please understand that Iowa law prohibits the discussion of specific employees of the district or their job performance. Please also understand that in accordance with board policy, board members will not respond to comments so that we can comply with open meeting laws. With those announcements and things out of the way, would you all please join me in reading the mission statement of the Marshalltown School District? We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And please stand as you're able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yeah, we have one change. The closed session, which was on a disciplinary matter, has been postponed to Wednesday at noon.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Lowry, Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Abby, we've got lots of recognitions this evening.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, good evening, everyone. Kind of like mentioned, lots of recognitions tonight, kind of starting off national qualifiers. Marshalltown High School had its 5 national qualifiers from the state national history contest that was held in Des Moines. The following students will go on to compete at College Park, Maryland on June 11th through the 15th. Landon Stanley, Isaac Benscoter, Jason Strand, Yesenia Alvarez Zamora, and Leticia Herrera. All 5 qualifiers are present tonight, along with Susan Fritzl, Marshalltown High School gifted and talented teachers. Oh, they want to come forward, be recognized.
I'll just say a few things about National History Day. It's a contest that we've been doing for a long time, and the whole process started back in September when students had to pick a topic based on the theme this year, which was Frontiers in History, People, Places, Ideas. After they picked their topics, they started doing research, and the research took months. We went to Iowa State University Library to find books and journal articles, plus they found a lot of online resources. And so they developed these bibliographies that are annotated in over 50 to 60 at least sources. Some of them have 80 sources in their bibliography. After that, they then developed their projects, and in National History Day, you can do an exhibit board, you can do a documentary, a website, write a paper, or do a performance. And we had 2 sets of performances and 1 exhibit board that went on to nationals. We went to a district contest at Central College in Pella first. All 4 of our projects qualified then for the state contest, which was held in Des Moines last Monday, and then the top 2 in each category moved on to the nationals. And so these are some of our national qualifiers. I'll let them each talk about their own project. Unfortunately, Landon Stanley cannot be here tonight, he's sick. But he did a senior individual performance called Pay It No Mind. It's about a woman, a transgender woman, Marsha P. Johnson, who in the 1960s really, I guess, pushed the frontier in LGBTQ rights, being one, transgender, which wasn't very accepted, and also being black, which also wasn't very accepted. So first, who wants to go first? I'll go first. We'll let our group performers, our senior group performers, tell you about their project.
It's on.
No, red is on. It seems counterintuitive, but red is on.
Oh, okay. It's up here.
Yep.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Jason Strand.
I'm Isaac Ben Scooter.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us and for your support as we send our project on to the national contest.
Our project is part of the Senior Group Performance Division, which means that we created a 10-minute performance, an annotated bibliography, and a process paper.
The theme for this year's contest is Frontiers in History, so we thought who better to make a project about than the Wright brothers.
The brothers were the first to create a powered aircraft, thus opening the frontier of air travel.
Their invention has had an enormous impact on modern-day transportation and the economy.
The brothers envisioned and created the world's first aircraft and attained controllable and sustainable flight.
Their development in air travel revolutionized transportation forever and paved the way for modern-day aeronautics.
Over the past few months, we have been gathering lots of information and crafting our project, and we are very excited to take it on to the next level.
And even more excited to represent Marshalltown High School as we compete for the national title.
Thank you so much for having us, and have a great evening.
Go Bobcats!
Nice one.
Hello.
Hello. All right, so when we first decided that we would do a project again, last year was our first year doing National History Day at Alden, especially as a group, and we managed to qualify for nationals last year as well. So we're thinking, how can we recreate that success? And so the first thing that was probably the foundation of a good project is, okay, we want something meaningful. And at first with the topic, it seemed that an invention might be more of a logical go-to, but we chose to go with more of a challenge, not because it wasn't as meaningful, rather because it's very complex, and the, how do you say that? The effects that it has on society today are a lot more spread out and harder to understand. And so one of the things that we prize the most about Marshalltown is the racial diversity present here. And so we decided to do a project on Loving versus Virginia, which was a Supreme Court case that legalized interracial marriage.
So Loving versus Virginia was a U.S. Supreme Court case that was focused on the Lovings, which was a white man with an African-American woman / Native American. And so during the 1960s, interracial marriage wasn't allowed. And so they were exiled from the state of Virginia because interracial marriage wasn't allowed. They moved to Washington, D.C., and they decided to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court case where their marriage was finally legalized, and then that means that interracial marriage spread throughout the nation to 17 different other states. And so this was such a big impact onto today, because usually you go into almost like a supermarket, you see an interracial couple and you believe it's normal. But we have to go back into the history and we have to focus on why this was so impactful in the time that it happened. And so that's why we decided to choose this as a frontier in history.
And of course, looking back, something that we were really just kind of in awe of is this happened during the civil rights movements, but there is a quote from, I believe, Mildred, just saying they didn't want to be civil rights activists. They just wanted to be husband and wife living where their family was in Virginia. So it really took us kind of in an emotional roller coaster of things to understand both sides or the multiple perspectives present during this issue. A lot of times it can be difficult to take a step back and ignore that emotional aspect of course, that anti-miscegenation loss, but see it as, okay, from the law, from prior history, and from its mentions today to truly understand our topic. Well, thank you.
We're excited.
We're proud of both the groups qualifying, and we're really excited to see how things go out in New York, is it?
Maryland.
Maryland. Okay.
All right.
So good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I turn this off.
All right. Next, I'm going to ask FFA to come forward. The Marshalltown FFA chapter attended their first leadership conference, the 95th Iowa FFA Leadership Conference on April 16th through the 18th. Iowa FFA State Leadership Conference is one of the largest of its kind in the National FFA organization. Cohen Thatcher, Lydia Colwell, Isabella Storhan, and Mackenzie Readout competed in the poultry judging and earned a silver placing. Denise, I'm going to totally butcher your name, so I do apologize. Andre DeFales and Quinn Eastman competed in State FFA Green Hand quiz, earning gold and bronze respectively. Rain Morales submitted a chapter exhibit over their holiday drive and received a bronze. Lydia Colwell and Isabella Storhan also represented the chapter as voting delegates. They join us tonight and are presenting along Tara Gray, FFA advisor.
Do I have to hit this or is it already on?
Nope,
It's on.
it's
All right,
good.
perfect. I'll turn it over to the kids so that they can talk here first. But with our state convention, is what we call it in FFA, there were 6,800 members that were present, so it's held in Ames at Hilton Coliseum. This was our first time. We were represented very, very well as Marshalltown. I had lots of advisors and other just parents and guests that were present that said how proud they were that Marshalltown actually had a chapter and how long time coming it actually was. So I'll let the kids talk about what they did, but we did have 7 of our official 11 members attend state convention, and all 7 competed in some sort of a contest. And I'll let them talk about their experience, what they saw at state convention, and a little bit of their contest and what they competed in.
So my name's Cohen, and I was a part of the poultry judging kind of test that they have that you can compete with in the state convention, and it's mostly you're just studying on how this livestock animal is judged and sold to the consumer, not only from live poultry, but towards processed poultry like chicken nuggets and chicken tenders and the stuff that we like to consume. And it was just really interesting to see how tedious and how in detail that these things are judged and passed through from producer to consumer.
I'm Quinn, and I competed in the Green Hand quiz, which is basically, it's 100 questions, and the questions they consist of about the history of FFA and other things surrounding that, I guess. There was a lot of people that competed. I'd say 200 to 300, and I guess I ended up placing 12th out of that many. So it wasn't that challenging, but I mean, because I knew a lot of the questions, but some of them I guessed, I guess. I took my best guess.
How do you prepare for that?
Well, Miss Gray, she made a lot of practice quizzes based on questions last year, and then some of them obviously weren't on there because they added new ones. But I just kept retaking those, and also there was a thing that we did in Intro to Ag, the class that I took last semester, and so I remember that stuff too. So.
I'm Mackenzie. I was in the poultry contest with Cohen and the other members. But while we were there, we also, there was many different exhibits to go to, like college exhibits or other contests to sit in on. We sat in on 3 other contests. One was a podcast sort of like contest where they were presented with a bunch of information on a paper, and they had about 30 minutes to take in all that information and make a script out of it, and they had 5 minutes to perform this podcast-like scenario. Another one that we sat in on was Experience the Action, which is a contest on introducing people to FFA. Like it's kind of like a recruitment exhibit thing. So they perform something, for example, a skit about FFA, and talk throughout the skit about different things that you do in FFA. And the last contest we sat in on was a debate where they talked about the issues with farming, such as a current issue that's happening with John Deere and the insurance policies they have there. And they had probably about a 10-minute debate on that. Let's see. Oh, and there was after we sat in on the contest, there was a meeting for all FFA members, and part of that meeting was the keynote speaker. Chris Nason. The keynote speaker this year was Chris Nason. He was paralyzed from the neck down, and he told us his story about how he didn't give up and helped and used family, friends, just his encouragement that he had to eventually be able to use his arms and move his legs slightly. And we got to hear him talk about his experience.
So are all 3 of you underclassmen then? What grades are you in?
I'm a freshman.
I'm a junior.
And I'm sophomore.
So did attending this for the first time give you thoughts about how you're going to approach it next year and what you'd like to do?
Yeah, we talked about we're going to try to experience the action next year, because we tried to this year, but we didn't get into we didn't qualify for state, but we reviewed our information that we got and the things that we watched at state, and we already have a plan for next year of what we're going to do for Experience the Action.
Fantastic.
Very good. I also think our kids are pretty humble. Quinn, like she said, she was 12th out of 299 kids that competed in the Green Hand quiz. If she would have got 1 more point, she would have tied 8 through 11, and if she would have got 2 more points, she would have been number 7. So really, really close in range. Lydia Cowell, who wasn't able to attend tonight due to work, she was 51st in poultry contest out of 580 some kids. So they did very well in our first event out. And then like Max said, Cohen and her did Experience the Action, excuse me, this year as a team, and they were the alternate to go to state. So if any of the two people or teams ahead of them would have dropped out, they would have been competing at state as well.
Nice.
Well, good job representing the Bobcats here. I'll be excited to see how things go next year.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So this is also with our first meeting in May, School Board Recognition Month. So it's an opportunity for us to thank our 7 board members for the efforts that they make on behalf of our students, our staff, our parents, and our community. Maybe possibly to outsiders looking in, and maybe to some of our board members as they signed on for this. The most visible thing are the 2 meetings we have each month, but what's not visible is all the extra meetings that we have. We have a plethora of subcommittees that meet on various things throughout the year, in addition to special board meetings or work sessions, whether they be facilities related, finance related, and those things. And then I'm probably most proud of our board members' continued willingness to learn and grow how to be effective board members, and that's been evidenced each, I think, 6 of the last 7 years. Our board has qualified to be recognized as one of, in some cases, it's 5, 7, or maybe a dozen boards and all of the school boards throughout the state for being part of the Team Achievement Award, which is due to their commitment for personal, individualized, and team learning throughout the year. And we are most recently, I think, 5 board members, and myself and Shauna were at a first summit that was held by IASB last Thursday and Friday, and I think 3 of our board members, just through what they've done through IASB, have already hit the threshold for better boardsmanship recognition. So I'm fairly confident that we're on a good course to hit that target again as a board superintendent learning team. So on behalf of our employees, thank you for your commitment to our district.
Thank you.
I believe that next week is Teacher Appreciation Week, which we convert into Employee Appreciation Week, and I know there'll be some cookies, I think, going out on behalf of from the board to our employees next week. I think today is National Principals Day, which kind of caught me off guard because we recognize the principals with a month, I think, in October, and now they have a day. And teachers have a day tomorrow. It's Teacher Recognition Day from a national perspective, and it's Educator Appreciation Week next week. So all kinds of celebrations here.
Okay. Anything else in recognitions? Abby, you got anything else for us? Are we all?
Just 2 information recognitions for high school math team. They finished 3rd among large schools at the Greater Plains Math League State Championships on April 22nd. A couple of them placed in top 5, and then one rounded out, placing 7th in the sprint round, and then Envirothon team, the Menacing Monarchs, great name, placed 3rd in the state contest held at Jester Park in Clive. So recognitions there.
Okay. Thanks, Abby. Looking at the consent agenda, then we've got minutes from the April 17th regular board meeting and from the April 24th special board meeting. Dr. Ryan, any items of note in personnel?
Yes.
Okay, we just want to take a couple minutes here to recognize 3 retirements. Vicki Cruikshank has served as a Franklin preschool para and also a K-4 special education para. Vicki is always willing to pitch in and assist students or staff. We wish her the best in retirement and in her new adventure in South Carolina. That's from Principal Holmgren. Pam Hugan from Lenahan, Assistant Principal Liz Jurgensen wrote this. She has been a special education para for Lenahan for the past 5 years. She's been patient, flexible, and compassionate in her role. We wish her the best as her retirement draws closer. And then finally, towards the end of the summer, Kurt Reinert will be retiring from Buildings and Grounds, and Director Todd Golding had the following to say. Kurt has been a pleasure to work with as a fellow coworker and a member of my B&G staff while in my director's role. Kurt has always been a real go-getter as well as always willing, to help and give his input no matter what the task may be. I know everyone in our department will miss having him on our team, but we truly all wish him the best during his transition into retirement. So we thank these 3 folks for their years of service to the district and wish them well. Thanks.
Thank you. In interagency agreements and contracts, we have a second amendment to the school-based supervisors contract with the Iowa Judicial Branch. An agreement for cooperation in student teaching and clinical experience for the 23-24 year with Grinnell College, and a change order from Larson Construction for lettering of the football goalpost pads. Questions about any of those items? We have the State of Iowa School Redistricting Worksheet, which doesn't really affect us because all of our director positions are elected at large. So we just need to fill it in and send it back and tell them that. Open enrollments, we have 1 in for the remainder of this school year and 1 out for next year. Randy, anything to note in bills?
No, not this month.
Okay. And then in gifts, grants, and bequests, we have a donation from First United Methodist Church in the value of $1,212 for Rogers Media Center, and a $2,000 donation from Trina Heimgartner and her father's estate to the FFA program. Oh.
Trina gave me the check. It's in honor of her dad who passed away. And we are going to go to Isle of the Green next week and purchase flowers with this money and then turn around and have a plant sale right away to have a pocket of money for next year so that the kids can grow most of the plants from seed in the greenhouse and then have another plant sale after that as well. So,
all right, cool. I'll just have you give that to Randy here.
Perfect. That's off my hands.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Stanley Lowry, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries 6-0 now. I don't see anybody in the pink sheet. Zach or Bonnie, is anybody? Okay.
No.
Tim, you and your team, come on up.
You made it. Congratulations. Don't be bashful.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us the time to come and present some exciting stuff with you. I do want to start off by just introducing members of our building leadership team that are here tonight. To my left is Danny Minkle. She is our school counselor. Next to her is Rachel Coulter, our current instructional coach. On the far end there is Miss Blair Struble, second grade teacher. Behind me here is Mrs. Jody Duffy, fourth grade. And we have next to her is Haley Pierce, kindergarten teacher. And next to her is Terry Hungerford, currently a first grade teacher. We wanted to start off by bringing this back to your attention. I know you've seen several of them. We're going to focus tonight mostly on the bottom right-hand box on my right side is our SEL goal. We focused on SEL for the last several years, and we're being responsive to what our students need. Obviously, literacy and math are very important to us, and they are the basis of what we do as educators. However, as the years have gone on, especially since COVID, it's more and more evident that our kids need that social emotional learning support as well. This graphic kind of brings it together. I know some of you may have seen this before in past board business. It kind of lays out for you the illustration that behavior, social emotional learning is just as important as the academics. For a lot of our kids, if their social emotional learning is not up to date and active, it's going to be very difficult for them to access the academics that we're trying to deliver.
So, like Tim said, we've worked pretty diligently over the last couple of years to not only make sure that we are monitoring and intervening with academics or with behavior just as we are with academics, but the other thing that was apparent to us and that we've really tried to increase this year is our overall teaching or our overall instruction with social and emotional learning. So I know I talked a little bit about this last year and I don't want to get too redundant, but just as a brief kind of background of how we got to this point and the changes that we felt were necessary was we were consistently being shown data that our students' self-reflections on where they believe they are social and emotionally, along with our teachers' perspectives of where our students are at using the SABRs, the MySABRs, and the conditions for learning surveys. We were in one of two boats. We were consistently either at more than 20% of our overall population being at risk, that's through SABRs and MySABRs, which that, if you have over 20%, that says that you need to go back to your universal instruction and not necessarily try and target and pinpoint the pockets of the problem behavior and look at more of an overview. And then our conditions for learning survey, which is connected through ISASP, showed very similar concerns. And we, up until this year, we were in a model of our students received preventative social and emotional learning solely through the counselor. They did receive classroom instruction at the very beginning of the year and continuously through the year based on common area expectations, and then they would have reviews. However, the crux, almost the sole instruction when it came to true social and emotional learning, not just behavioral expectations, was delivered through the counselor once on a 6-day cycle for about half an hour. There was a year in there during COVID where we popped back into the specials rotation and it was 45 minutes. But when you compare that amount of learning to the amount of learning that they received in math and reading, very, very different. So after we would repeatedly see this data, we were continuing to ask ourselves, okay, what can we do more? What can we do better? Alongside us continuing to ask ourselves those questions and reflecting on where our current practices were, this was our first year of implementing and our teachers being trained on the responsive classroom model. That is a model that helps schools overall, but also classroom teachers, really understand and implement a strong culture and climate in their classrooms when it comes to how to set up their classrooms, how students can interact with each other. But again, we were missing that true instructional foundation component. And so that we were really we were really right on the ledge of, okay, we've got all these other things going for us. We know we need something else. And that's when we went to the responsive classroom training, we were introduced to the Fly 5 curriculum, which is through the same parent company as responsive classroom, but this is a true curriculum. This isn't just some classroom strategies to implement to help increase the climate and the culture. So then it really became, everybody was on board mentally, and it became a matter of logistics to figure out how are we going to change our daily instructional schedule to make time for this curriculum and this teaching. And that's where we'll get into this in just a minute. But that's when we piloted the Fly 5 curriculum. We were the school this year who had the opportunity to not only pilot the curriculum during the counseling time, but the classroom teachers also implemented this curriculum as well. So it was really hand in hand, and it was very cohesive between what they were learning in the classroom from their classroom teachers and then what I would come in and teach during the counseling class. And this is just our mid-year data of our SABRs. So this is the teacher perception of where our students are at. You'll notice there's actually 3 colors you see. There's kind of that bluish, and then the light red, and then the really dark red. I'm not quite sure. It's kind of funky. We really only look at risk, which is the red overall, and then not at risk, which is the blue. And this is where historically our data was either over 20% or we would actually go in the wrong direction throughout the year. And so the teachers take this screener on every student in our whole building, K4, in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. And this is the first year that systematically we have seen very positive results. You can see that there's only one grade level that stayed consistent, second grade, with where they were in the fall. We don't have spring data yet, but everyone else improved. You can see right there, third grade went from 30% at risk of their students to 21%. That's a really big jump. And so our mid-level kind of check showed us that, hey, we are finally on the right track to getting our kids everything of what they need, not only through the responsive classroom implementation, but also by providing the actual curriculum component in the classroom and during counseling class. So on the very next slide, that's where I think you'll start to see a lot more of this. This is the logo of Fly 5. Each color represents one of the different components of the curriculum. And so I think as you start to see and start to hear that a lot more, you'll learn those nuances. But for today, what we wanted to have you sample was, this is Mrs. Angie Pedig. She's a third grade teacher. And she actually recorded one of her entire lessons. But just for the sake of today, we kind of picked out some of the pieces and put it back together so that you can really see the main components of the whole lesson and preview what one of the essential lessons of this curriculum shows. This is her lesson on self-control and delayed gratification.
All right, boys and girls, today we are going to continue our lesson about controlling our impulses and delaying gratification. So, your objectives. We're going to identify temptations, okay? And then you're going to get a chance today to discuss ways to resist temptations and how controlling your impulses and delaying self-gratification can be beneficial. How can that be helpful? So let's just do a quick review of your vocabulary words. We have, first word is temptation. Everybody say temptation. Temptation. Desire to do something that may not be the best choice is the temptation. We have gratification. Gratification. A reason for satisfaction or pleasure. Then we have delayed gratification. Say that. Delayed gratification. That's putting off something mildly fun in order to get something that is more fun in the future. Okay. Then I have impulse. Impulse. Sudden urge to do something without even thinking. Okay. Now, yesterday we read about Amani's big decision. And her decision was, who remembers what her decision was? Avery, what was her decision?
Her decision was that she could either eat the cookies or wait till after her audition. And see if then she could eat more cookies.
Yep. And her mom even left her a note and she says, do not eat these. These are for your friends after the audition. Okay, so we talked about what we would do if we were Amani. And we also talked about some different strategies. Okay, so let's review those strategies because today you're going to get a chance to decide what strategy you would use in a certain situation. So these are your strategies. 1 and 2 go together, and that is close your eyes to avoid the temptation and remove yourself from the situation, physically or mentally, okay? So, that's 1. Or these 2 are kind of combined. Then you have weigh your options. Think about the good and the not so good results. So if Amani ate those cookies, the good thing would be that she would satisfy her temptation. The bad thing would be what?
That she doesn't get any more cookies.
Yeah, and what else, Megan?
And that she's probably going to get grounded.
She might get in trouble. And then will there be any cookies for her friends?
No.
No. Yeah. So those are the bad things. So you can weigh your options. The next strategy is to use a countdown calendar. Okay? Countdown calendar is where, we talked about that yesterday, where you have an event that you're looking forward to and you make a countdown calendar for it. Okay? Remember I talked about how when my family was planning a vacation to Florida, we made a countdown calendar for that to go to Disney World. So that's a strategy. You're actually going to get a chance to make your own countdown calendar. Not today, on Monday. Okay? And then you're going to, the last strategy is plan your reward for waiting. Okay? So if I wait, if I don't, in a mommy situation, she didn't eat those cookies. Do you remember what her reward was? Raise your hand. Do you remember what the final reward was going to be? Ashlyn.
The final reward was going to be that she would get as much cookies as she wanted after the audition.
After the auditions, she and her mom were going to make cookies, and then she maybe could have as many as she wanted.
Maybe.
If she didn't get a tummy ache. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to read to you 4 different situations. You're going to go, we're going to play 4 corners, so you're going to go to the corner that you would do it, what strategy you would use in that situation, okay? So right over here, I have plan a reward, okay? This one back here by the table is remove yourself from the situation. Then I have weigh your options, and then countdown calendar, okay? Make a countdown calendar. So, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what you would do in that situation. All right? So are you ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, here we go. First situation. You stop by Grandma's house to visit, and while she is talking with Mom, you go into the kitchen. She has been icing her delicious chocolate cake for the church bake sale. It looks delicious, but you can't put your finger in and taste it because then no one will want to buy it, right?
There's germs.
Okay? What strategy are you going to use? Let me read it one more time. You're at your grandma's house. She's made her delicious chocolate cake for the bake sale. You really, really, really like that cake and you want to eat it, but you don't know if you should or not. What strategy should you use? Go ahead and go to your corner. Steven, go to a corner. All right. Okay, so now that you've found your option or your strategy, I want you to spend a little bit of time talking about why you chose that strategy. Go ahead.
It's because, well, what if there's like a slice or 2 left over? You can have that slice.
Yeah, you can have the leftovers. So, because if you went to that, like you could just do that, like just like staying in there, because then that would make me want to.
But it's hot.
Oregon, and because I would probably eat it and like get a scoop of it.
I would probably.
The countdown calendar has some good thoughts. Yeah. Megan, say what your thought was about the.
I chose the countdown calendar because maybe I could ask my mom if I could go to the bake sale, and maybe I could eat some of the cake there, and also I might be able to get some more things.
I like that. So you would not eat the cake now, or try it, but you could make a countdown counter for the bake sale. Then when you go to the bake sale, you can buy other baked goods.
Yeah.
I like it. All right.
Video credit goes to one of our high school helpers. She was a good sport. Okay, next slide.
All right. All right.
So what you got to see in Mrs. Pedig's lesson is, first of all, active engagement. You got kids that had to think about the decision that would be the best choice for them. You saw kids interacting and being able to articulate the why behind that. Those are all thinking skills that we need kids to have. Now, obviously, the scenarios that were used in the lesson are, they're not safety issues. They're not, some of the more pressing and more challenging decisions to make, but it is the basis for what we want our kids to do. They have to feel safe when they're working through their choices. And so when they are faced in life with challenging decisions, that they have the thinking skills to work through. And so I included this slide from Dr. Stuart Avalon. He is the author of the collaborative problem-solving process that the district has invested in with our staff. And this quote just says, "Kids do well if they can." So I think back to that lesson and the engagement. I'm always excited anytime I walk into a classroom and I see kids sharing their thinking. Not just one-word answers or a shoulder shrug, but having a conversation with another student, being able to accept other perspectives, and yet still be able to provide evidence for what they believe. The other part that goes along with collaborative problem solving is kids do well if they can, and it's skill, not will. And so what 5-5 has provided for us is an opportunity for our teachers to engage our kids in working on those skills. Next slide. All right, so we wanted you to hear from the kids about Fly 5. So this slide, don't take our word for it.
I like to learn about fixing problems. I like the characters. I like fixing the feelings. I like learning new words that I may not have known. I like learning different feelings.
What's your favorite part of Fly 5?
Stories. Journals. Problems and solutions. Scenario cards. Responsibilities. Working in a group. How to celebrate kindness. Taking care of our part. Listening to the teacher. Listen to your inner voice.
Go ahead.
The most important thing that I've learned in Fly 5 is to respect people's culture.
Very good.
The most important thing I have learned in Fly 5 is how to control myself.
Very good.
The most important thing I've learned in Fly 5 is how to encourage people when they're doing something.
The most important thing I've learned in Fly 5 is how to keep friends and respect friends.
Very good. Thank you.
My favorite part of Fly 5 were the stories because I like stories. My favorite part of Fly 5 was the gallery walk because I like to see other stuff.
We've learned the most about cooperation. We've learned the most about assertiveness.
We've learned the most about responsibility.
We've learned the most about empathy.
We've learned the most about self-control.
My favorite part of Fly 5 was reading the stories to help people work for their problems.
Our favorite part about Fly 5 is cooperation.
Our favorite part about Fly 5 is assertiveness.
Nuestra favorita parte de Fly 5 is responsabilidad.
Our favorite part about Fly 5 is empathy.
Our favorite part about Fly 5 is self-control.
My favorite part about Fly 5 was bullying. My favorite part of Fly 5 was bullying because then you learn how to stand up to people and you can stand up for yourself too.
My favorite part of Fly 5 was learning about the rumors and how it's not okay to spread them.
Video credit there goes to Mrs. Coulter.
So good.
In the next slide, what I wanted to do is kind of make a connection for you with NIET, which is the instructional framework that the district has adopted. So throughout this school year, during our building professional development, we focused on morning meeting, interactive modeling, closing circle. Those are some of the components of responsive classroom. And then also, obviously, Fly 5 implementation. What is important that for our staff is that we were able to use the framework to have conversations around where our teachers felt they were in the NIET framework. And we talked about evidence. What is the evidence that you feel like you're at this point, and what can you do to improve? We had reflective tabletop conversations. We had numerous video clips. So what you'll see on that slide for your own viewing pleasure at a different time are actual lessons that we did during PD time. And our teachers sat in collaborative groups, and they talked through the different domains and indicators in the NIET framework. All right. What questions do you have? And we have some classroom experts with us as well. So
I was going to say, last time I approached you guys about Fly 5, Jan asked me if I had any classroom representation of how they were doing, and I was looked back, nope. So today I brought the whole slew of them, so you can ask them whatever you want.
I was just going to say, what is their feedback on? Like, do you guys have something that you especially like or have seen a difference?
Pretty nice. Within my classroom, so I'm a fourth grade teacher, so we've got a lot of emotions going on throughout the year and hormones and the things. So what I've noticed is the kids are able to recognize their own feelings, be able to put words to those feelings, and to constructively get through those feelings instead of it being, as hard as it could be. They're using the terminology that we learn in Fly 5, which is really nice because then we know that they're getting it, and so that's probably one of the biggest things I'm seeing. When we were done with the lessons, because when we started and then we finished the curriculum, they're asking now, why don't we do Fly 5 anymore? So what we're trying to do is incorporate within our classroom, our class meetings, still doing things with Fly 5, but just not the lessons because we've gotten through everything. So.
Yeah, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I've just found the curriculum to be incredibly developmentally appropriate for their level. It gives them like actual concrete strategies to use and real situations that they would encounter in kindergarten. And I mean, it's the basis for social emotional learning in kindergarten. You're learning how to be in school and how to be around other people. So I've seen kids actually implementing those strategies. Like Jody said, they're using that common language, I think, which is so helpful just throughout the school. And I've just seen a huge improvement in the kindergartners as a whole, being able to manage emotions, being able to access those strategies, sometimes with prompts from teachers, but I found it to be very beneficial.
Hi. And I teach first grade and totally agree with what these two say, but I just had a situation a couple days ago. I had a girl, we had talked about in one of our lessons, like perseverance and the power of yet, where they learn that they might not be able to do something now, but they say, I can do it later. I'll be able to do it later with practice and with perseverance. And when my girls came up to me, she was trying to cut out something that was kind of difficult to cut out. And I told her to keep trying. And so she came up to me and said, she got it all cut out. And she said, I didn't give up. I used the power of yet. And I got it done, she said. So we're really seeing the kids, using what they learned, the vocabulary, and some of the vocabulary words are pretty big, especially for the little ones. But I really think we're seeing a difference in the classroom with just them using the strategies and remembering. And we also, throughout every day are going back to what they've learned, not just during that lesson. We are constantly reinforcing that during the day. to keep it fresh in their minds, so. One thing that I've seen a big difference in this year is student accountability, and that was one of our units. In the past, when I've said something like, oh, somebody left their headphones here on the floor, it would be a chorus of, oh, they're not mine, not mine, not mine, I didn't do it. But this year, that happened, and a student said, oh, I'm so sorry, those are mine, and he went and picked them up, and he came up to me and he said, I owned it. Because that was a term that we have used about owning our own behavior. And so I agree that the kids are using the vocabulary. They're also recognizing when they're doing the positive things that we've been teaching them to do. And sometimes when they don't notice, we're there to point out like, hey, you just owned what you did. And then as they hear it through each grade level, they'll start to internalize that more. So
Excellent. Other question? It sounds like you guys are making huge strides with kids as far as helping them to understand the vocabulary that's associated with behavior and being under control and those kinds of things. So as our fourth graders are now going to be moving up to fifth grade and then to sixth grade at Linehan, is there anything in place to help our intermediate teachers to learn the vocabulary that the kids are currently using?
Yes, so our curriculum adoption this year was actually K-12. So Fly 5 will also carry over into Linehan. It will be the exact same curriculum. And then there will be it won't be all of the kids, obviously, but there's a small population of students who will attend Bobcat University this summer, and they will start dabbling in this learning prior to going to Linehan next year, so they'll get a little bit of pre-exposure. And then the middle school and high school, as Valerie Corson talked about the night when we talked about curriculum adoption, they are also kind of doing an overhaul of their SEL program, but they're doing something that fit their needs a little bit more differently at the secondary level. So yes, 5-6 will continue on with Fly 5, and then 7-12 will start to receive more, but it will just be a different curriculum.
Other questions from anybody?
Could the middle school staff get like a cue card of what your little words are, like I own it? And honestly, that would help the transition into the new curriculum.
It's nice that the kids are getting exposed. Now it's how do we help our adults carry on with prior learning? And
one of the resources that we have, sorry to interrupt, Bonnie.
That's all
One of
right.
the resources that we have in our rooms is posters that have these range of emotions. And that's really, some of my kids will walk up and say, this is where I am right here. I'm like, well, how can we move one way or the other, just to make it better for ourselves. So that recognition, and I think even as the kids are getting older, that if they're able to recognize how they're feeling and that they're in control of it, if they can be, sometimes they're not quite in control of it, but I think for the adults too. And some of my kids will ask me, Mrs. Duffy, where are you? I'm like, well, I maybe need to be here, but because I'm owning my emotions, and we have to do that. So
it's helping to give our teachers those strategies also in the next grades. Have you seen a difference in your majors and minors when they come to the office, or the way they talk to about what they got in trouble, or why are they there?
Part of that is we were waiting for our end of the year data to pull all of those kind of cumulative records. What our mid-year information that we've really looked at has been with the Sabres and the My Sabres. So I guess yet to be determined. I'll tell you that the narrative has changed, and with the other data changing, I'm hoping to also see an improvement with that data source as well, but don't know quite yet. So we can come back and give you that answer in about a month.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nicely done. Yeah, very good.
Wait, hold on, guys. You're not next. Oh, not you guys. You guys. Amber's next. At least on the agenda I have.
Amber.
Everyone? Thank you. I go in the shorter chair. Hi, good evening. This is not related to my presentation, but my kid's going to Franklin next year, and I couldn't be more proud. Super excited. Okay, back to regular scheduled programming. I'm Amber Danielson. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts and Culture Alliance. I got a chance to meet with most of you to talk about this and share more with you because although it is a quick read, there is a lot of information packed in these 12 pages, so I will not go to that depth here tonight, but I'll just give a high-level overview. The Arts and Culture Master Plan was an initiative that started a couple years ago with the recognition that Marshalltown 1 is in a really unique position because of our natural disasters. We're turning them into an opportunity to rebuild our community in a way that many communities do not get, and I hope they don't get, but here we are, and we're turning lemons into lemonade. Also, that Marshalltown has quite a few master plans that really guide our community and the community development throughout Marshalltown. Like, we have a trails master plan, a park and rec master plan, we have a downtown plan, and on and on. So this initiative was not to create another plan, but to really create an implementation strategy on how we accomplish those plans and making Marshalltown unique, distinct, and authentically reflect the people that call Marshalltown home. So throughout the plan, you'll see we had a planning committee, a steering committee that we did have Marshalltown Community School District representation on. Julie Thiede was a part of that steering committee, along with many other organizations and groups throughout the community that were represented on this effort. In partnership, the Alliance with the City of Marshalltown, the Chamber, and others did this effort with a consultant, and so a big part of this process was community engagement and really understanding those plans that I mentioned, along with truly understanding the needs and desires from our community. So a big portion of this was community engagement, which included survey and also focus groups that included one in particular just for our Latino community and one also for our Burmese community, along with several others. And so really what we're talking about here is how do we make people feel more connected and a part of our community? How do we create a welcoming community and make people feel really attached and connected, because we know that when people feel engaged or feel part of something, they're more willing to engage. And so that looks like attending events. It looks like running for school board positions. It looks like voting for those positions. Picking up their property and cleaning up trash when they're at a park, and the list goes on and on and on. So throughout this effort, then 5 placemaking themes were created: revitalize over restore, build bridges, activate hope, elevate youth, and heritage of innovation. We also, throughout the plan, named potential partners, some of which have natural fits to some of the ideas in this plan, which the Marshalltown Community School District is listed, but also recognizing that this plan truly is an invitation to the community to take part in this. We cannot do this alone. This is something that we all need to do together. And so this list is not all encompassing because we couldn't fit everyone in 12 pages, but this really is an opportunity for the community to take part in community building. I just wanted to focus really primarily on Elevate Youth, which is probably one of the most obvious of the 5 themes of we recognize that Marshalltown youth is our future generation, and so how are we elevating their voices, giving them a seat at the table, and amplifying them, really being a part of community building so that hopefully they choose Marshalltown as their future home. So obviously you'll see the school district listed on that one, but there's several others too. There's some overlapping themes in there. This plan is a 10-year plan. It's ambitious purposefully, and some of this stuff just takes time, and so we recognize that while 3 to 5 years sounds nicer, we also wanted to be realistic. And so this is, there's some really big ideas in here, and that is intentional. Towards the end, you'll see a community that dreams together, grows together, and again, we really hope that this is a community-wide effort. Also at the end, you'll see the Arts and Culture Alliance, we led this effort, again, a community effort, but we'll continue to prioritize championing this effort. We went through strategic planning in alignment with the master planning process, and so it is our top priority to implement this plan, and we'll continue to keep it at the forefront. Questions? And that's a really quick overview.
What do you need from us? Is there anything you're looking for from the district specifically?
Yeah, right now, I think we're still in the education and awareness phase. Dr. Schutte and I and Julie Thede and I have talked about the continuation, although the steering committee's work is completed with the plan being finalized. I think some of these placemaking themes, especially Elevate Youth, along with several others, warrant an ongoing committee to just keep a focus and priority on it. So seeing an opportunity for the Elevate Youth, which would include seats for youth themselves, as we really kind of roll this out. So at this point, I don't have a direct ask, but I will likely be back in the future.
Amber, I know that you have future meetings scheduled. Can you give us kind of a picture of what goes on during those meetings, and if we were to attend, what role we would play?
Can you tell me which meetings?
I don't know. There's one in July, and then there's one in September.
Yeah, those are kind of like a subset of this, right? We have ongoing meetings with arts and cultural organizations, and then we also have ongoing meetings with artists. So those are probably the meetings that you're getting pulled in on, that you're referring to. So I don't know if the school district would necessarily
have a role there yet.
Have a role there. I think there would be a separate, more focus around youth in particular.
Okay. And you'll let us know.
Yeah, another committee down the road, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Bonnie.
That's what I was trying to figure out, is how we would connect. We've had an orchestra program for quite a while, but we still don't have any type of chamber music in the community. At some point, I could see the school starting to coordinate with the community in that manner, but I'm not sure where you're at in the process. This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, so definitely why I'm here for awareness. The first step in this was the city formally adopting this plan, which took place at the end of February. So we're still kind of in that formal rollout phase. This, while, the direct to music and arts and visual arts and that is part of this plan, this really truly is a lens that we're inviting the community to look through in how we creatively address community building and community development. So some of those direct programmings has a part in this, but this is kind of a higher level invitation for this lens that we're inviting the community to look through in, events and programming and planning and just community building at large. So recognizing that, this community has lots of challenges we're facing, like any other community out there. Most of them are not unique to us, but we believe there's a creative approach in how we address those and make it so that it's unique and distinct to Marshalltown, and that it's authentically reflecting all of the people that call Marshalltown home.
Okay.
Well, and I think, I look at it as a continuation of work already in progress, whether it was, prior to my arrival with the drill statue work, the silhouettes, the statue in front of the Morristown Performing Arts Center, the mural that went on the Orpheum, the Christian Maxon, sidewalk work, and I know that there's a project in the works for Woodbury potentially. I think it's just a continued willingness to think big and work together to try to help promote arts and culture across the community, and the school is a part of that.
Yeah, and I think the stuff that's already in the works at the Orpheum. I mean, with it becoming a welcoming center, you'll read in here narrative about, being more welcoming and having more welcoming centers. I mean, this is something you and I talked about. Some of the things in this plan are already happening, but this was an opportunity for us to really put it all in one place, start speaking kind of from the same narrative, and so some of this stuff is already in the works, but it's something that I think we can point back to as really moving the community forward. So I think some of this stuff is already happening, and now we can even have a greater focus on it.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work in the community.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. I'm here to request out-of-state travel. The plan with these Sister Day students is to go to College Park, Maryland, University of Maryland, June 11th through 15th, to participate in the contest. We will be staying in the University of Maryland dorms with the Iowa contingent. We will fly into Reagan International Airport and take the metro to the college. While we're there, we will definitely be competing. There will be some time to go into Washington, D.C. and also take advantage of all the free Smithsonian exhibits, etc. So it will be very much a learning experience at the contest, but also in that region.
Any questions?
Do you need people to go?
It could help, but I think I can handle.
Sounds like fun.
It should be fun, yes.
Actually, I think that's where I'm going to be in DC.
We need a motion to approve the out-of-state travel request to College Park, Maryland from June 11 to June 15 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Lowry Hernandez is who I heard.
Thank
All
you.
in favor, say aye.
Aye. Okay,
Opposed, say no.
thank you.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Now it's your turn.
All right, we'll proceed with MHS. Yeah. So 10th grader Hannah Hill got top award at the Central Iowa Tech Fair. And so how this competition works, it's kind of a mix of technology and the student's own interest. Anna here is an artist, and so she decided to compose her own puzzle. You'll see that little cat up there. That is of her own design, and she won the ever so coveted purple ribbon. And on the right, she can be seen presenting and showing her certificate. So congratulations to her. And as previously mentioned, the Menacing Monarchs got third place in the state competitions for Envirothon, and the Mud Puppies were noted to have performed well despite missing team members. And the way that this competition works is that you really have to all be there for you to do your best. There's a lot of knowledge to cover in different soil types in Iowa, aquatics, wildlife, all sorts of things. And so each of the team members there is kind of like their own little expert. They do a lot of practice, both hands-on and just textbook study. And I believe this year they decided to form their teams by just skill and people that were willing to work together and do their best for the competition. Now on to Lenahan. And so this is kind of like the parallel of Envirothon. This is our junior conservationists. And so what these students do is, not for competition, but just kind of out of their pure interest, they do a lot of visits to Grimes Farm and learn a lot about wildlife and such. So you can see them there making kind of clay replicas of the scat of the wildlife that they find, learning how to identify it. You can see they're enjoying it a lot, so that's good. And on the right, they are making kind of plaster molds of tracks, and so they learn to identify all the wildlife through bones, fur, tracks, scat. And so you can see that the children that are really enjoying this now are probably the ones that are going to be in things such as Envirothon once they're in high school. Okay, and so the Ricochet Leadership Group at Lenahan Intermediate, since it's the end of the year, they have their annual leadership panel. And so how this works is that the Ricochet coordinators invite a couple people from the community, and Dr. Schutte was present this year. And what they do is the students kind of reflect on what they have done in the year, all those fundraisers, all those lessons on how to be a leader, how to solve problems, and think, okay, these are real people that they aspire to be, I guess, in the community, and think, okay, what are some good questions we can ask these people so we can prepare ourselves? And so they had this whole list that they had agreed on. It was very cute, but they were very well thought out questions, having a lot to do, with real issues such as communication or stereotyping and bias. And you can see on the right, that's just one of their most recent community service acts. They had donations towards ARL. So you can see part of their graduation is you just have that, once again, that big reflection with families and friends and show them, okay, this is what we've been doing all year and this is what we've amounted to. And a lot of these students will be receiving their first ever letter of recommendation as part of graduation.
Alrighty, I'll be covering sports today. Both softball and and baseball practice officially start today. Girls tennis have a meet today against Des Moines Lincoln. Also having a meet here in town on Tuesday against Mason City, and an away meet on Thursday against Des Moines North. Boys tennis has an away meeting on Tuesday against Mason City, and having a senior night this Thursday against Des Moines North as well. Girls soccer has a game tonight against Columbus Catholic at home, and an away game on Tuesday against Des Moines Lincoln, and an away game as well on Friday against Waterloo East. Boys soccer, on the other hand, has a game this Tuesday against Des Moines Lincoln, and as well as Thursday against Waterloo East. Boys track has a meet this Thursday with Waterloo, and girls track has a meet in Ames on Thursday as well. Finally, girls golf has a tournament on this Friday against Mason City.
Lots of sports activities this week. Wow.
And music concerts too.
And then in IJAC for MLA, we are planning on volunteering around the community, like for instance, the Veterans Home and a couple parks around town as well this week. And that concludes our presentation for you guys.
Are you doing cleanup activities?
Mhm.
The parks? Okay. Yeah.
No concerns, as always, hopefully.
As always. Can I put in a request for next meeting? Should be your last meeting, because then graduation will be here. So at least, I think 3 of you should be graduating.
I officially graduated today, actually.
You beat us to it.
Thank you.
What?
Are you coming back next meeting?
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah.
Can you include in your presentation next meeting, the 3 of you who are graduating, what your plans are for next year?
All right.
That would be nice.
Well, since it's a special request, I'll make sure to include it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And certainly if Natalie wants to throw in what she's planning next year too, that'd be fine, but I assume her plans are to come back and be a senior in high school, so.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yesenia, were you invited as a community leader in that Ricochet? I saw you in the picture.
That was me in the picture.
Congratulations.
It was an interesting experience because I was in the program as well.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. It's fun to see that loop go around, but very enjoyable.
That's awesome for them to see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, a number of years ago, prior to COVID, Lenahan Intermediate School applied to be considered by the state for a computer sciences elementary grant, and the primary substance around that was to infuse coding across a curriculum at Lenahan. So through that grant and that process, we hired a computer science teacher, Amanda Miller, who particularly at the 5th grade level teaches an exploratory of computer science, and then over the course of a 2-year transition. The rest of the teacher core classroom teachers at Lenahan infuse coding across their curriculum with both Amanda's support and assistance as well as the instructional coaches. As we were looking at how best to approach that, we came across an organization called Code to the Future, which is a very, very comprehensive programming the way it was initially rolled out. It's for elementary through middle school primarily, but we went and sent teachers from Lenahan, from Anson to visit schools, also some district personnel. I know David Stanfield and I, for example, visited a school in suburban Chicago. Erica Fenders and a team of teachers from Lenahan and Anson looked at, I think, a school district near Milwaukee. We also sent a group to look at a different school district that was implementing Code to the Future in South Dakota. And when it came time to decide about how best to approach it, we kind of pushed away from Code to the Future just because the model that they promoted at that time was very cost prohibitive, like hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 4 to 5 year period. Since then, and since implementing, relying pretty exclusively on free resources, in addition to having incorporated Project Lead the Way at the elementary, which focuses a lot on coding through the teacher librarians. We touched base back with Code to the Future again and had found that they've now come up with some different programming because they felt that there were schools like ours who would like to receive the support from Code to the Future because it's very high quality work, but needed a different way to do it. So we've had couple meetings, probably 2 or 3 meetings after having talked to them when Sean and I were in San Antonio with the Lenahan staff, and for them learning where Lenahan students are based on what we're doing with kids through the elementary into Lenahan, and have worked out an arrangement where they will provide support for the next 4 to 5 years through a train the trainer approach, where they'll work directly with designated classroom teachers from Lenahan as well as the 2 instructional coaches and administration to help support their efforts to take them from where they're at to a much higher level. The coding then continues beyond Lenahan into Miller, but not as a cross-curricular thing, but more so through the Project Lead the Way programming as well. But we really feel like this will be instrumental to get our kids at a high foundation place. And quite honestly, it'll probably leverage more to happen at Miller over time once this gets put into place. So I'd like to recommend the board's approval of this partnership with Code to the Future for the next, I think it's 4 years with Lenahan Intermediate School. The source of the funding will be through ESSER learning loss funding for next year, and then we'll shift that over to teacher quality funding, professional development funding for the following years. Or 5 years.
It looks like 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's $23,500 for next year, and then $25,000 for the next 4 years. Go ahead, Jim.
So the question I have, we're going to train a few teachers, and then they're going to train other teachers. Is that what you mean by train the trainer?
Right.
Okay. My question, because we've tried that, I believe, with Project Lead the Way, and it started to fall apart. Do we actually have a plan for when those trainers will train the teachers?
Well, it'll be worked into professional development schedule, but also it'll be something that can be done within the day. I mean, our instructional coaches push into classes all the time, and we'll be co-teaching some of it, to help support. But building professional development time, some of that will be used for that as well.
I think that has to be very purposeful. I think if it's left to, the teachers will do it when they have time, it won't happen because they never have time.
Yeah, it won't be approached in that fashion. There's actually target dates for which different parts of the work, they work towards epic builds at the end of 5th grade and at the end of 6th grade, so there'll be target dates where professional development will be provided on site by them at the beginning of each school year. And then I think there's 12 virtual sessions that will be held throughout the year with these teachers who will then, again, take it to the greater audience of the core teachers in Lenahan. But some of that will be designed within professional development building level time. Some of it will be provided outside. It could be before school, after school, or what have, with targeted teachers and that sort of thing.
Okay, it needs to happen. It can't be vague or it won't happen, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and again, they're going to be providing us with 12 sessions beyond the in-person sessions. And then I don't have before you how Lenahan's going to map out how they're going to push it out.
No, I think it's an important thing to do. I just am aware of how that often doesn't happen when we think it will. And that's my only caution. Do you have anything to say, Sean, on that?
I think I just need a microphone at my seat. So we don't have it all the details mapped out on who will actually be serving as the trainer, if that makes sense. So my brain starts thinking through logistics as soon as we know who those people are that we've identified. And like Darren said, we can make sure to push an instructional coach in to free up the teacher to go to their face-to-face training. I mean, the training is absolutely going to happen.
Okay, so the training will happen. It's getting the logistics down and make sure the rest of it happens.
We need to make sure we get the right people in those train the trainer models, because if you get the right people, then it spreads organically, if that makes sense. If you don't free those right people up to get the training, then it can fizzle. And I agree with you with what you're saying. It needs to be a structured plan. I just can't tell you that we have it because we've got to identify who those right people are for Lenahan. And there's no doubt that we have those people.
And it will all be designed so that at the end of the year, there's an exhibition of learning for parents, as well as the rest of the students and the staff, kind of like open house type of thing where the kids will show their projects that they'll be working on throughout the year that will be done in a cross-curricular way.
And that opportunity would be great for Miller to participate and kind of come see the showcase.
Right. I'm not quite sure, like when you say project lead the way kind of fell, but I'm not sure what that means. I think we've had enrollment decline at the high school level, but that's largely probably been due to the fact that there's a different credit situation now, as far as the dual credit type thing goes. Every single student goes through Project Lead the Way at Miller and gets exposed to all three areas for which they have opportunity to choose classes at the high school.
I didn't hear complaints at the secondary level. It was at the elementary level.
I wondered if you were talking elementary. There was a time period where we had ELL teachers serving through that Project Lead the Way. That was a long time ago.
Right.
And I wondered if that was the stretch that you were referring to.
Yeah, they were feeling like the training wasn't offered, or people were supposed to come in and train them and they didn't. And honestly, Project Lead the Way is just an example of one that didn't work. But I worked at Miller for 17 years, so I saw a number of these things come through. That the idea was that we were going to train one teacher and that teacher would train other teachers, but no time was ever set.
I think the main difference that we have now are instructional coaches, or like true teacher leaders that are removed from the classroom. And Darren, I don't know how much detail you've talked about the trainers, who those people will be. But we've been a lot more successful with that. And to be honest, if, responsive classroom, CKH, you probably have heard on repetition that the training itself is difficult to get to. And if we had our own trainers on site, it would ease and create more efficiency with the actual training. So I think it maybe does differ based on your experience when you were in the classroom and the structure of leadership that we had then compared to what we have now and the capacity that we have to build teachers.
And the intentionality.
Yep.
Getting it done.
So there will be, the way I'm reading, so up to 4 lead teachers will be supported with the train the trainer, so it's not all teachers being trained, so just 4 each year, or how am I reading this?
4 people will be trained as trainers who will then
Okay.
push out to
So
the other
every year.
teachers.
Okay.
So train the trainer is essentially saying that Code to the Future is going to bring on 4 of our people to have the skills and expertise of the actual Code to the Future trainers. And we'll have them on site at Lenahan.
Okay.
So they'll be the go-to people to be able to spread that more organically throughout the building.
So every year we'll have 4 more.
I don't know if it'll be 4 more or if it will be the
Same 4.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the answer to that. And it may be that we can pick and choose who those are each year, but they'll be very highly skilled people once they get through this training as it relates to teaching the skills that are going to be necessary for the kids to complete the projects that they're going to be expected to complete. And we already have them working on projects. This will just take it to a different level of knowledge and expertise. And they've been very amiable about customizing their program to match where our kids are and take them to a higher level.
So it sounded like this is going to be mixed in with their current classes. And so how are we working with this organization to match that to our current curriculum with reading, science, math,
And Darren,
literacy?
you've been in a lot more of the conversations than I have. I can
Yeah,
answer
so
at
Erica
a certain
Fenders is our elementary curriculum professional development leader. She was also on the forefront of the writing of the grant for computer sciences elementary at Lenahan. So I'm not sure if they will continue to approach it in similar fashion as they have been approaching it, just doing different things through this program, but we're already integrating coding throughout those core subjects. That was the whole intent of the grant, is not to make this just you only do this when you're in computer science class, but how can you use these skills to also supplement the learning that happens in math, science, social studies, language arts by incorporating it into projects, which is also what Code the Future is all about. It's not teaching it in isolation from other things, but showing how it can apply to all subject areas in some way, shape, or form. So it will be taking what we're already doing and taking it to a different level and kind of providing some further energy into the program that we've been doing for 3 or 4 years already.
Does that answer your question?
But again, in terms of how they might morph this differently from how they've been doing it in the past, I don't know the answer to that. But I know that we've had them working with Erica, the instructional coaches from Lenahan, and the administration to talk about how this would help them.
I think they had maybe a different avenue rather than the VEX kits that we had. I don't know how many of you went to Lenahan for that visit, but you saw the VEX kids in the science classrooms, and they were able to adapt their coding into the VEX kits and be, kind of seamless with that versus us having to purchase their product or manipulative. Which was great. I mean, that they're willing to work with us that way, because really what they've identified is we're not starting from ground zero with coding.
Have you seen any examples of how they've embedded the coding into social studies classes or in English classes? Or are they still going to stay within the computer science time? I'm seeing the word embedded, and so I'm wondering, are they going into the other curriculum areas, or are they staying right into the computer science?
Yeah, coding, I mean, that was the whole purpose of our original grant. Was kids were initially introduced in 5th grade to it primarily through Amanda Miller's class, but other teachers in the cores were also in the 5th grade taking it and starting to use it within their classes. Year 2 was when it reached out, especially in sixth grade, to where it's taught across the curriculum. So it's not just the computer science teacher doing it. I can't tell you specifically what projects they're doing. I've seen them. We did curriculum walks with the board and saw the first couple of years that they were implementing it.
I haven't seen it specifically in social studies or ELA. I see it blending much more appropriately with math and science. That doesn't mean that we can't. I just, to be honest with you, I haven't seen it.
What kinds of things have they done in the area of science with the coding?
Primarily Scratch, and I think you saw that in one of the classrooms that we visited. Can you think of anything beyond Scratch that they're using?
Well, the way Scratch actually operates, even if they're doing this in science class, you're really looking at an English skill. It's logic. Scratch is. So it may not be in their language arts curriculum. Oh, sure. But when you look at what the skills it's developing, it would be developing
And following the
logic.
directions. And,
Right.
Yes, I understand.
Vocabulary.
It's especially true for bilingual learners.
I think one example would be in English class, they write short stories or whatever, and then they code animations to parts of the story. Would be an example. Same could happen in social studies easily. But this is good that we need to get the board more exposed to what Lenahan's been doing in this regard. It's been quite a while since we adopted it, so.
And I do think that, Code to the Future, we're thinking about the future, right? Preparing our students for whatever they have to come. And when you think about coding in ELA and the AI, composition that's out there currently, ChatGPT can develop an email for us that's very professionally written in 30 seconds. So that's all done through coding.
Right, it is. And actually, even if you don't teach it directly in ELA, the fact that you're teaching that structure is going to be reflected in the way they think when they write. It'll be more logical and more reasonable. It's just not going to look the same as a Scratch program.
Right, yep.
I think one of the projects that comes to mind was, and I think it was a science-related one, but I think the student was illustrating maybe using Minecraft or something to the human digestive system and how food, goes through the body. So, there's a lot of different things that you can use it for, but we can have Lenahan share that too, because they already, I think, internally do kind of exhibits. They just don't make them as public with parents and stuff.
Absolutely.
So I think that Zach and I attended the Osage session last week. And I think seeing how they're implementing some of these same, they're not using this particular company, but how they're implementing these same thought processes and tools throughout might be good for those teachers at Lenahan that are taking this training to really understand what else might be possible above and beyond what they're already doing today, or share, maybe Osage learn something from us in that area as well.
Yeah, I think it's great to know that they're as far along as they are. And I think specific to Lenahan, even Code to the Future was a little bit impressed with how far they are along, but even connecting those two and networking, they're going to learn from each other.
And there was that networking early on in the grant when the funds were available, but I think it kind of discontinued. But we use Nubuco out of Cedar Rapids, similar to who Osage uses for training of teachers, and we brought them in for the teacher externship to give a presentation to all the participants as well. And a lot of our teachers at the other buildings, at elementary buildings, incorporate some degree of coding just on their own through free resources like code.org and that sort of thing too, to expand upon whatever it is that we've asked them to do.
Well, coding is definitely in our future. It's something that we need to start working with our students so that they're ready. Yep. It will be interesting to see how it's implemented and how it is embedded. It's good.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question about procedure. So are we just approving the agreement tonight and not any of the funds? Because I don't see the funds listed here.
The last page.
Yeah, it's on the last
They're in the
page of
agreement.
Yeah, I didn't find them in the agreement either.
Ah, I see it. Okay.
On that exhibit. Is there a motion to approve the agreement with Code to the Future effective May 1, 2023 to June 30, 2028 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry, McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Good evening. I have one change to quickly address here. You saw these at the last meeting. These are the employee handbooks and appendices. In Appendix E, which is for certified staff, this blue text at the bottom of the current page 6, that is a new addition. And the district and the union developed this in conjunction together, just solidifying this is our practice, but putting it officially in the handbook. When teachers who have a regularly scheduled prep period miss their prep because they have to cover for an absent colleague, they are compensated after their third time each year. That amount of compensation has not changed in several years, and so we'd like to put it in the handbook that it's a consistent 1/7 the regular substitute teacher pay, and that's because of 7 periods. And so that any time our substitute teacher pay changes, this will automatically change. So this is really just putting it in the actual handbook. And like I said, the union was very enthusiastic about this change, and we did this together. So that is the only change you will see in the documents that are before you.
Any questions for Dr. Ryan or any comments?
1/7 of the regular substitute pay for 35 minutes missed, with the maximum compensation being 7. So basically, they could be compensated for up to 2 periods a day. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, so if they, most teachers, they will not like for the middle school and high school with a block scheduling, a block is typically 80-ish minutes, and they try to split that up between teachers, but just in case one teacher does cover, for example, 2, they would be compensated for 2 of those. So 70 minutes is the max per day they would be compensated.
Any other questions or comments?
And all of this has been reviewed with shared with the reps.
Yes, they were very pleased with this change.
I mean, all of the changes throughout the whole document have been shared with.
Yes, we've been, they've had, by now it's probably been over a month with the documents offering feedback and edits and changes.
Is there a motion to approve the 23-24 employee handbook and appendices as presented?
Move for approval.
Second.
Hernandez, Stanley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So next we have all those student handbooks that were presented to you at the last meeting by the respective principals or directors, preschool, elementary schools, Lenahan Miller, high school MLA, MVA, and transportation. We haven't made any additional changes. We might, before the next school year, have some adjustments that we'd bring singularly to you to consider, but there's been no changes to what had been presented to you at the last meeting. So I would recommend approval of those.
Are there any questions? And may I have a motion to approve the 23-24 school year student handbooks as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
Lowry and McGinnis. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Hello. It is that time of year again where every year we purchase new Chromebooks for a few grades of students, and that helps us stay on a replacement cycle so that students get a new Chromebook every 4 years. So that's what we have in mind here with the 1,300 Chromebooks that we'd be asking vendors to propose. That's 3 grades, and then that also includes paras. Paras devices right now are going on the 5th year. So that's the Chromebooks, the licenses, and then we do cases for the 5th grade devices and then the 8th grade devices. So that's those 2 grades of cases, and then we also need to finish replacing the carts at the elementary schools. So some of them still have very old, almost 10-year-old gray carts. So we've replaced most of them, and these 12 are the last of the carts that we would be replacing.
Are there questions?
Not. I know they're coming out with some articles now about the Chromebooks and how long they last compared to others. So from a cost perspective, are they still less expensive than going with regular laptops?
Yes,
That's kind of what I
absolutely.
thought.
The Chromebooks that we have here do everything that our students need them to do and are significantly less than PC. However, when I have talked in the past about why we decided to go with laptops for teachers instead of Chromebooks, some of the things that the teachers were being asked to do with streaming and multiple applications is a little more than what I'm proposing here as far as what the technology would need to be. And as that advances in the Chromebook realm, then yes, they can get more and more expensive as you add RAM and all of those things to them. So you can get a much more expensive Chromebook, but these are high quality Chromebooks that we're proposing that do the job for the students.
Right, so.
May I have a motion to approve seeking proposals for the annual Chromebook replacement as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Wall, Lowry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amy.
So the next item is a interactive touchscreen television that I'm seeking board approval to purchase. I had sought out quotes from 3 different companies, this one being Wall of Fame. Varsity Pros was another that's popular, and Insane Impact, who is providing the digital board for the stadium project, all received quotes. This quote was by far the cheapest for the same touchscreen television, computer capabilities, and that sort of thing. The intent of this TV will be to go in the Orpheum in what I would call the main lobby area, the concession area, where we're going to be shifting what was a museum that was located where the Welcome Center is going to be. We're in the process of purchasing some mobile display cases to complement what we inherited from the museum. And then ideally, we want over time students to curate and digitize all the artifacts that currently exist within that collection so that it can be accessible at any time by the public through this interactive touchscreen. So there will be things that will be on display similar to what they would have had with the original museum, but we want everything accessible at any time through this interactive display. And we're going to have students working over at the Orpheum through an independent study project that Colton Hankey will oversee, and our intention will be for that to dovetail nicely with the class that Amy will be teaching over there that incorporates digital photography, digital videography, along with other technological things. So I think in a perfect world, we'll probably get some students from Amy's class, quite honestly, to get involved in this, but it should also appeal to students that like history, students that like to write, because we'll need to write narrative to go with those artifacts and those sorts of things. The funding source for this will be a combination of discretionary funds through the Martha Ellen Ty Foundation that we have available to us annually, and also the $5,000 grant proposal that you approved from Alliant Energy at the last board meeting that was for this project.
Questions? May I have a motion to approve the purchase of an interactive touchscreen television for the Orpheum in the amount of $13,495 as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Board policies. So we had two.
We skipped the architect agreement with FEH.
I'm sorry. Yeah, missed that. Okay, so last spring, we had FEH architects, Kevin Epperly in particularly, worked with Jackie Wyatt and the high school CTE teachers to evaluate the current spaces that they were in. So this would be family consumer science, industrial arts, also the agriculture program, which was growing. And then we also had them review or tour and talk to the science teachers regarding their lab settings. For the most part, all of those spaces which exist are more similar than different to when they were either originally created, when the building was created in the 60s, mid-60s, or through the renovation that had taken place over time. And it's all relatively antiquated, quite honestly. So from those discussions that Kevin had with the CTE teachers about their hopes and dreams for making improvements, he developed some very, very preliminary designs and cost estimates, particularly just so that we had an idea of when the time came to address this, what we would be looking at. And so this agreement would be to do further work in this regard to create more specific designs and cost estimates, so that if we're in a position and so choose to move forward on these improvements, and the soonest that we'd be looking to do it would be next summer, not this summer, that we could be in a position to do that. Right now, the preliminary cost estimate based on very, very preliminary work that's been done thus far is probably around $8.5 to $8.7 million for those spaces. It would include the creation of a new culinary kitchen in addition to renovating all of the family consumer science spaces that exist now. It would involve creating a two-story classroom situation in the one remaining courtyard that's on the southernmost side of the building for agriculture classes. It would include a complete renovation of our, I think it's 3 different classroom spaces that are industrial arts related, plus would include an addition to that area to accommodate bigger structures, especially like for woods. If they were to do a tiny home, they need a way for that tiny home to be either put inside or taken outside in order to be delivered somewhere. So basically a dock, kind of like, not a dock, but a garage door type space, a bigger space where they can work on larger structures like that. So very preliminarily speaking, that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. We actually will have Kevin's going to present these very preliminary ideas to the CTE Advisory Committee on May 9th, and then also we've invited in other business people to provide input on what those current thoughts are based on the input that's been shared predominantly by teachers, so that we also engage the local business community as to those ideas and see if there's anything else that we're missing there as well to try to further enhance those designs moving forward. But this would be strictly to do the further development of the design, the preliminary cost estimates, so that if we so chose, we would be in a position to go out next year for bid on a project such as this.
Zach or Bonnie, you guys are on facilities. Thoughts, opinions?
I think this is really the first that I've heard anything here about the development, because I wasn't on the board or whoever was on facilities
true.
last year when they went through all of this. You know, I'm sure it's been covered somewhere along the line, but I haven't been privy to this. But my understanding here is just to give approval to go out and see what could be. You know, it's not an approval of moving forward to implement change or
Correct.
renovation. And so I think from a facility standpoint, there's a lot on the plate right now in this district for facilities, and things will need to be prioritized. I think we need to have a firm understanding about what it would look like at the end and what kind of dollars we're really talking about, so that we can start to prioritize some of those things. So, you know, as long as this is just to go out and see what could be and bring us back ideas, and there's no commitment in dollar or purchase or build, I think that's, you know, we need to cover that ground before we can make any decisions. Zach?
Well spoken.
You're good? Okay. Yeah.
Well
As
said.
there's just a lot on the plate right now for this district, and we're making good decisions down the line, and just now getting everything in a row here, prioritizing and seeing what's needed, and, you know.
I guess this is preliminary, but, you know, we have quite a different levels here, but do we have like the top 3 we want to do? If we could, if the numbers didn't come in right, have we gone that far yet? Well, like this project here, you know, we talk about the whole project and together with all the different labs and stuff. Have we gone that far yet? Or are we just trying to look at the whole picture?
We originally had them, what we'll have them do is break out by the different departments, what the cost for those areas would be. We had Kevin do that roughly when he originally came up with, and, you know, pretty much each area was $1.5 to $2 million, something like that. I think the one thing that wasn't maybe defined as well was what it would take to renovate the science labs. But as far as these other programs, and all of these programs obviously feed the employment pipeline as it relates to, I mean, when I talk to local business leaders, these are the programs for which they're seeking employees for the most part. And so we've charged the high school with building up these programs in order to accommodate that and hopefully get students, you know, either with certifications, endorsements, going on to MCC if there's required additional learning to happen there. And we've, to be honest, we've kind of outgrown, we have too many kids to accommodate that want to be in these programs, and we need to get better facilities for them.
Dr. Schutte, you know, last week we sat in on Greene County about their career and tech program. How are we going to lean more like they do with their current employers and the local college? Is there anything we can do here?
Well, we have avenues for those discussions through Iowa Valley Community College District with the RPP Regional Planning Partnership, also with you know, the Perkins Advisory Group, which is the group that's going to be the CTE advisory, essentially, is meeting on May 9th. The challenge in doing something like that is that the lead usually comes from the college versus the school district to develop a regional center that not only would serve Marshtown students, but would serve area students, typically would provide instruction and learning and equipment that it'd be best not to have to replicate across 5 districts because of its cost or what have. Can offer some unique programming to fill certain niches that it might be hard for any one school district to provide. We've advocated for, with Iowa Valley, I've advocated for consideration of doing something like that. It just really hasn't materialized. And again, you know, they've got to get agreement from not only Marshalltown, but the other surrounding districts to participate if they're going to, you know, build a new space and create that kind of learning opportunity. We'll keep plugging away. The DE actually just, in their newsletter that came out today, spoke about that very thing, how they've recently done a study. It's identified like 15 different areas in the state for which these regional centers would be appropriate. I haven't had a chance to read it to see, you know, where the closest one to us was. But essentially it's like creating a Hunsinger Center, which Story County has had for a number of years to accommodate high school students in these college level opportunities within the CTE area, but to do that across the state. And there's even money available, like I think it's grants up to $1 million to help those projects take place, but there hasn't been really any motion for that thus far.
To your point, Zach, about Greene County, I mean, the advantage they had was their distance from the community college, right? So I think the fact that Marshalltown Community College is right here is a disadvantage to us, right? Because why would they partner with us to build something on our campus when they could just build it on their campus? That's my initial thought.
And then the thought I would have is if they can build it on the Marshalltown Community College campus, is there a reason for us to duplicate it on ours?
I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just saying I think it's a disadvantage in trying to do some sort of a regional partnership thing along the lines of what Greene County did, just because of our proximity to MCC. But that's just my thought.
And I have a completely unrelated one, again, having worked in the Miller School. Where do we stand with family consumer science, industrial tech, and the courses that would lead into these courses at the high school? Because those rooms, I believe we did see on our Miller visit, and some of them are in not very good condition. So where do we stand on that?
Well, students today would get exposure to those career pathways through the modular tech class that we created a couple years ago. So there's, I think, 17 different modules representing all the different career pathways that they would get exposure to. We partnered with local businesses to create those centers. Right before COVID is when we did that.
No, I'm not asking about the curriculum, I'm asking about the space, the physical space in which those classes are happening. Is it?
Well, there's just one class, which is modular tech. It could be larger, I mean, ideally, but we don't have standalone industrial arts in the middle school, they haven't had that for some time, or family consumer science in the middle school.
I know they took it out while I was there. So that's basically what I'm asking you, because those are the types of courses that would feed into these courses, and do we even have it at the middle school?
Students get exposed to those areas through the modular tech class that we created. That's down in that area where industrial arts used to be, across from
Right.
Project Lead the Way.
Right, I was in that room. That's why I brought it up. Okay, it's, this was my impression. It's very long, very narrow, very dark, and I'm not really sure that it's an amenable classroom space. So, I mean, we're looking at all these huge projects at the high school, but do we actually have usable classrooms in the facilities that we have?
I guess I would say to what Bonnie said, right, which is there are a lot of facilities needs in the district.
Right.
And I don't think anybody is saying we're going to do this at the high school, but we can't make decisions about what we will or will not do or can or cannot do until we find out
The information.
the information.
Right. And I agree with Bonnie. I think we need to find out the information. I just think we need to be aware.
Well, we did have a facilities committee that, last week to talk about the different approaches that can be taken with constructing buildings today or significant projects. And I mean, I think through that, it became pretty clear that, to do something significant at Miller in terms of what it will cost, and we've been looking at this for a number of years and have known this for a number of years, it's probably going to be about a 2-year process. One, to sell the community on a bond referendum, and then the second to actually pass a bond referendum and get the construction off the ground. Mm-hmm. Whether you build a new building, whether you do a combination of new and renovate, we're 2 years out, and we knew that it was going to be, we had to get past 2024 to even be in a position to consider that kind of project.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't want us to forget about it.
Have we done this type of work for that project or not yet?
We have not done that work other than just talk to people about what kind of dollars are we talking about. If we were to rebuild the significant portion of Miller, renovate the auditorium.
I guess I'd like to see us get a discussion started in that way, just ideas for what we could do.
Yeah, and that's why we had the meeting with Facilities Committee the other day to see what kind of approach that we want to take, because we may want to give serious consideration to engaging a construction manager to help lead through that, which we have not done on prior projects since the original roundhouse renovation, I believe.
I think, Jan, just to help out here a little bit, we don't have we know what some of the priorities in our district are, but we don't have the priority list of when we would accomplish these and in what order we would accomplish these and how much it's going to cost for each of the projects.
It would be nice to start thinking about what that's going to be.
Right. And so the facilities meeting that Dr. Schutte is speaking of, there might be different ways in which to accomplish the building rather than just putting it out to bid and taking the bid.
Oh, I agree with that.
We were looking at a different way to help manage the completion of the projects. And so we haven't really gotten into what needs to be done at Miller or how the specifics of what would stay, what might go. We've not done that. I understand you're saying that it would be nice to have some kind of timeline. I think we can get there, but we're going to have to take one project at a time to get there. And so.
Yeah, I think the reality is, I think my belief is that those two are two priority projects for the next two projects. We're probably going to be needing to work on them simultaneously to be in an optimal position to move on Miller and yet not just have a standstill until we do that.
It's kind of the whole seeds of hope thing. That something's being considered. No, I understand. I think you're doing the right thing here. I just feel like, I still don't feel like we have and maybe you do at the facilities committee, but I don't feel like I have a picture of what our plan is long-term.
What the next step is.
Right.
Is there a motion to approve the architect agreement with FEH Design for the Marshtown High School Career and Technical Education additions and renovations as presented?
So I can move that one, right? So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Now we're on policies.
Okay, we have two policies coming back for first reading. 506.1 Education Records Access, which was amended, and 506.1 E8 Annual Notice, which was amended. We haven't made any changes since they were reviewed at the last meeting, so I'd recommend approval and waive the second reading.
Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve 506.1 and 506.1E8 and waive the second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry, Stanley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Jan, are you okay with me covering these?
Yes, I emailed you back. I'm okay with that.
All right.
So,
All right, so we'll start with, in the initial review, with those that we're recommending just be marked as reviewed, where no changes other than legal references and/or numbers need to be made. So 506.4, student library circulation records. 507.2E2, parental authorization and release form for the administration of medication to students. 507.3, exclusion from communicable diseases. 507.6, student insurance. 507.8, student special health services, and 507.8R1, special health services for students, administrative rules. We had Stacy Toole Crawford review these with me, and all of those we're recommending just be marked as reviewed.
Are there any questions about any of those policies? Okay, they will be marked as reviewed.
Then 506.2E1, authorization for releasing student directory information. We made adjustments on this similar to what we did on the policy so that those two things aligned. So that would come back as a first reading at the next meeting. 507.1, student health and immunization certificates. Stacy recommended removing information that was in there on tuberculosis since she said most of that is taken care of when people enter into the United States from outside of the United States. 507.4, injury or illness at school. We're suggesting to remove the phrase student incident report requirement and have changed it to written document requirement, just using different terminology there. And those amendments would all come back to you at the next meeting.
Are there questions about any of those policies?
No.
They will be back next time.
And it will be my turn again, right?
Yeah, we're going to have you fill in for Bonnie, because Bonnie will be gone.
That sounds good. All right.
We need to move the next week's, the May 15th meeting to May 16th, and that's, I'm trying to remember the reason. The speaker,
Because we'll have Adolph Brown.
Thank you.
Community presentation.
We need a motion to move the regular board meeting scheduled for Monday, May 15 to Tuesday, May 16.
So moved.
Yep, second.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Abby?
So I wanted to come to the board tonight and just give a little bit of an update where the website redesign is. Kind of starting off meeting with Juicebox, I've been pretty impressed with the communications with them. The team has met with the chief strategist, Dale Bentledge, twice in person. My first day was a 4-hour training of just how to use the website, how to put the content together, all the blocks, all the information that we need to know. So really impressive there. I know he's been really responsive to each of the team members' emails and video calls, spending, a good chunk of his time helping us out with that. And recently had a 1-hour Zoom meeting with all of us, I think about a week ago. So what we are currently working on right now is content for all the district departments. So that's body copy, that's forms. So taking Google Forms and converting them into proper format for the website. And then also converting files. So each member of the team has sat down with the directors to pinpoint what they need, what needs to be combined currently on their pages, and what can be removed. Another big part is photo content. So big goal for mine with this website redesign is that it absolutely shines from photos to copy. And so right now we are building up that photo storage. I know I'm taking photos, and we've also gotten help from students on this. One student, and then we're also getting help from a professional photographer here in town to spend a day at a couple of our buildings building up our media library for that. Let's see. And with those photos, it's kind of an interesting range. Des Moines Public Schools kind of has a photographer specializing in this area, but for certain photo blocks within the website, you need to have certain photos, so you don't have a head cut off or something that looks weird. So a proper line of sight, really good with perspective, making sure your aperture looks well. So that's kind of where photos are at. Another big area is the file conversion. PDFs have to be, must be in PDF form to be ADA compliant. So those with seeing disabilities, stuff of that nature, to make sure they are able to use their readers to look over it. So with that, that's, I'm guessing, a couple hundred files to look over and convert into PDF format, making sure we have updated logos on that. Everything looks nice and tidy, especially with the Marshalltown branding. Forms, as I mentioned before, kind of converting quite a bit there. Other items, Bobcat headlines from current to April 2019 will be pulled over to the new website. So kind of look back there. We're still figuring out details about the digital backpack, what that will look like on the new website. Kind of exploring those options still. And so The next question is what Juicebox has been working on. So content blocks has kind of been the big thing. We've been talking back and forth about, these are some of the buttons that we want to add on, some of the call outs. One in particular is called accordion, which is you click on it, it drops down, you can read your information, click on it again, goes back up. Sitting with some of our directors or department heads, we've kind of figured out specialty items we've asked Juicebox to make. I know for Randy, we're making a tax calculator to figure out, you take your numbers, you plug that in, and you can kind of figure out what you'll be paying. And then they're kind of building on foundational elements for staff directory, the calendar, working on website alerts. We're kind of working off of a website style guide right now, so we're kind of looking, if we have this, it equals this, how do we put that in? So that's kind of been our guide looking over our content. So what comes next? When we hit a stopping point with any of our pages, we pass it over to Juicebox to really clean it up, make it look sharp. They tidy up, kind of the rough edges, the areas where, we need help with that website development, and that's where they come in. The redesign team will be transitioning quickly from the department pages to the schools, which is a whole nother can of worms right there. A lot of forms to go through, a lot of PDFs, sitting down with principals and seeing what information needs to be brought over, what can be combined, really helping out that decision-making progress whenever a community member is looking for information on our website. Again, growing our high-quality catalog of photos, another big part of that. And then for the next school board meeting, we will be having Dale on Zoom to take questions on May 16th and kind of sharing final products of those department pages to look over. And from that, if anyone has any questions.
When is this going to be done? That's a big question.
It's a big question, yes. We're aiming for summer, correct, Amy?
We're hoping for is it June 15th? Is that June 19th? Is the second board meeting in June?
19th.
Yeah, that was the one that we're hoping to do live on that date.
So all the kinks will be out before the kids go back to school, right?
That's why.
Yeah. We want registration to happen on our new website.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Which originally we wanted last July. Yeah, I want to commend Abby and Amy we've moved light years with Juice Speed in just the last month or so here, and so I'm getting encouraged that we're going to have a product.
Thanks, Abby.
No problem.
Looking at reminders, Jan, you get the privilege of doing initial review policies next meeting.
Okay.
We've got some committee meetings upcoming as we get to the end of the school year, so keep an eye on those.
We had TQ this time, teacher quality.
Takes us right into our next thing. Jan, why don't you give us the
Lowdown.
45-second update on TQ?
Okay, basically they approved the idea of giving a stipend to the teachers who are staying to kind of offset the stipend we gave to the teachers that are leaving. So,
So that's been a while.
Remember, so we've already done that.
We've already done that, okay. The main thing that came up with this one was, that I was going to ask about, was the idea that look at our policies on teachers going to conferences, when they won awards, that type of thing. Make sure that we are consistent, because we've had some teachers who are, when they go to conferences, that they are allowed to have
their subs paid for, the conference is paid for, other teachers have had to pay for everything themselves when they go to conferences. It's been an inconsistent policy over the last few years. So maybe, Shauna, you could explain that better.
So I think that came up in relationship to a science. There was a science teacher that said, hey, way back when we had rotations where teachers were allowed to go to national conferences and they just kind of had a schedule for it. It's been a lot harder recently to do that when those national conferences are during the school year and the teachers would need to be removed from the classroom, but we don't have subs to backfill. And we had a teacher who kind of came forward and said in that meeting that, you know, there's been some inconsistent practices in the past. I don't think she was reporting that that's the case right now. The team did say, let's continue with the opening up a lot of professional learning opportunities in the summer like we've been doing because it's been going really well, and then try to hold down our teachers in the classrooms during the school year because of the sub shortage. And if we were to somehow work our way out of that sub shortage, I think that's where we were headed.
I think so, except for the idea that some of these conferences are 3 or 4 days long. You know, it's one thing if a teacher misses one day to cover with a sub, but we would like to start encouraging our professional organizations to hold those longer conferences during the summer when most teachers are off.
Yep.
It just makes sense.
Yep. 45 seconds?
Close. Bonnie, do you want to talk about the Auditorium Foundation a little bit?
Well, we did have a meeting. I didn't bring my notes. We took a little time, Theron help me, and Sean, took a little time talking about whose responsibility it was to do certain projects, and we need to move ahead with the carpeting project. Also, we talked a little bit about
what was it?
the ticket booths.
Projector is the word I
Oh,
want to
yeah.
use, but I'm not sure that's the right word.
Yeah. Yes, and where lights are projecting down on the stage and where that location should be. We had Dr. Schutte brought in DLR to talk to us about everything that could possibly be improved about the auditorium. And this is where we really need to prioritize what's going on there. At least all the needs have been identified, and if we would make all those updates, it was, I don't even remember the amount. How many million?
4 million.
4 million. So, you know, I think that there are some things that are at a decent price range that we need to take a look at and really listen to Jose and what he is sharing with us with regard to things that need to happen right now. And they're all, in my opinion, they were all doable. So, I mean, it's not, the 4 million's a scary number, but that was everything, even more than what we thought would happen, I think, in the report.
Yeah, well, a project that was supposed to happen last summer that didn't, that hopefully will still happen is that additional carpeting and then the burlap wall piece. And then the Auditorium Foundation members really, I think a priority for them was looking at trying to turn that ticket booth into a more usable space. So we'll probably, because a lot of those projects are shared funding type things that we'll need to build into the buildings and grounds budget. You know, some of it we can knock off over time, but some of it we may choose that if we do a big project, for example, at Miller, that we might want to incorporate into that project too.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of things were discussed.
A lot of things were discussed. I would say Jose seems like he's settling in well.
He is. He is settling in well. And he's very realistic on things that need to be changed and what needs to be new and what he can use that is still existing to make things work better. So he said, I don't need a new laptop. What I need is. And so, he's very level-headed. So it's good.
And it's a new set of eyes, right? I mean, Al did a tremendous job for a long time, but a new set of eyes is nice over there too. So. Anything from facilities that we didn't talk about earlier, Bonnie, Zach? Awesome. Internal communications, I was just looking back at at the notes on the agenda. We talked about teacher covering classrooms, that Dr. Ryan made that change to the handbooks. There were some questions about when the HumanX survey results would be available and shared, and I don't remember what the answer was, but Dr. Schutte had the answer for that.
Yeah, the district results we're looking at for May 16th.
And there was some talk about recruitment and retention of teachers, which is a fairly common topic at that meeting. I don't know, am I missing anything else? Dr. Ryan, Shauna, Dr. Schutte?
I think there were some clarifications that were sought on some of the discussion regarding the middle school behavioral issues from when Dave and Kristen came to speak to the board, so we addressed those.
Yes, and I just remembered the other one. I'll go ahead and do Special Olympics now, it just left my, there was another one at TQ too, but Special Olympics you were going to mention?
No, Karina had asked that Special Olympics come back at a meeting
Yes, she had
a
mentioned
presentation or some information on what we do, what we can do. That was, right.
Right.
So it wasn't on tonight, but we'll get it on an agenda.
Yeah,
With that, is there any other items anybody would like to see on a future agenda?
we probably should look at the policies for how we're going to cover, what is our policy when teachers earn awards and need to go to national conferences? What part of that do we cover and what part of it we don't cover? We probably should have a consistent policy if we don't. So we need to look into it.
Should we share anything from our sessions
Summit.
last week?
The summit.
Yeah, go ahead, Leah. You can start.
Okay, so I enjoyed the poverty, I enjoyed, it was
Enjoyed
very.
feels like the wrong word.
It
but yes.
does, but the poverty simulation that they had us do was extremely eye-opening when you did your retrospective. When you were going through it, it was kind of a game, right? Like you had your things that you were supposed to do and you had to accomplish, but when you then sat down and I've been thinking about it, like it hasn't left my head since we've done that. And you keep thinking about like the whole time we're sitting in school, we're hoping that our parents get groceries or that this happens, or, like you're just what you were thinking about the whole time and thinking about what the kids are going through and the parents are going through as they, everyday things that we don't think about, or I personally don't think about, or have to think about, that they have to think about. So, that just was extremely eye-opening, just how everything was difficult. Transportation, just everything. Then the sessions that I attended, I mentioned one earlier with the Osage schools and embedding tech and computer science into their everyday curriculum, K through 12 across all areas. And I know we're doing that at Lenahan, but just the idea of, could you do that? Could we take an elementary school and do something similar to that at an elementary school as well? One of the interesting things to me is I look at how we are using basic coding just in everyday jobs within the company I work for to automate redundant tasks, or each individual in what we're doing. We have a program that is set up to train people just how to do that themselves and bringing that skill set with you, how much easier and more just normal that would be. And I think it's going to continue to become that way. So I can see how someone would be using those skills no matter what role they would move into in any organization moving forward. And then it kind of fit in with the other one I attended was about magnet schools. So I felt like those two things kind of fit together a little bit with how things were being implemented.
Bonnie, Zach, do you guys want to share anything?
I'll go first. Went to a session called Resource Navigator, and it's run by the people doing the presentation for Muscatine. So the population is very similar to what we're looking at here. And they have a person in each building there called a resource navigator, and they work with public health. And so it's the resource navigator, which might be like our resource specialist in each school, working with families to identify needs that families have. And then they have like 120 resources going through public health that they just line people up with those particular services. And as we're thinking about putting together our Welcome Center, we know that it is definitely for new families coming to Marshalltown and registering their children and helping them to navigate a new community. We might also be looking at assistance for those families that are resource specialists are in the school, are identifying needs from families that have been here, that maybe we can have that particular kind of service in our Welcome Center also. And the resource specialist or the resource navigator in the schools in Muscatine really take that family under their wing, because as we found out in our poverty simulation, sometimes we don't have all the skills that we need to navigate everything that is here in our community to help us. And so it's one thing to know about the resources, it's another to have assistance to get them. Mm-hmm. And so that's to think about, I think. And then also, one of the things that we do is deal with budgets as we're sitting here thinking about everything that is in the district. There's a statement that really hit me, and it was right at the end of our day and a half there, and it was, budgets are human values with a price tag. Budgets are human values with a price tag. So we need to figure out, I think we know what we value. We know what we want kids to be able to do when they graduate. So it's really using that vision and staying focused on what our primary values are with regard to that human price tag, what we're producing at the end. So,
Zach?
I'm going to echo a lot what Bonnie said and Leah, and talk about the poverty workshop of when you're talking about the resources, whether it be a resource navigator that school district use. It's a trust process. And what led me into it, the first day we were doing the poverty workshop, after going through that, I call experiment, or you have trust issues. You have trust, now you kind of understand that they went to go get help, the place is closed. They're out of money, they say they're gonna get money, the job's gonna pay them, they didn't pay them. So, the trust issues, those resource navigators that school district use, they have to build trust within the community, within the parents, within the kids, and they help kind of navigate those other partners outside of school districts. So that was kind of neat to learn more about. And another thing that I'd echo with Leah about was the coding part. I mean, I don't know if anybody watches those little iRobots going around on the carpet. You're trying to figure out, how did they code this thing to do this? And, just the kids, if we could get it, from kindergarten on up, I felt Osage did a great job kind of explaining, the different variations of coding and how they use it. And I think the analogy they used was, trying to, I find myself doing this to my own children or my office help. hey, just do this, but I'm not giving them all the directions. You try to tell them, make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Well, when you go to Coda, if you don't put all the directions in, it's not gonna happen, right? And so it's kind of interesting to listen to Osage talk about. And then the last thing would be the Greene County presentation. I hear you on that. We're the same area, I get that, right? But it'd be nice somehow we can partner with our local community somehow. I don't know how. And with our career, with the different businesses around Marshalltown, somehow partner and do a great job of helping with the next career path for these kids. But that's all I got.
Shauna?
I don't know if it's working. I really don't have a lot to add. It's incredible just listening to you and what you took away from the learning. I think it's just your messages are student focused, and it's really an honor to get to work with all of you. The poverty simulation was eye-opening for me as well, but from the stance of Sarah Faltis was my daughter and she was expelled from school. Zach happened to be her boyfriend, so that was interesting. And a little extra fun flavor to that. And it was actually last on my priority list to try to get her back into school. And that really blew my mind, that it hadn't occurred to me to try and get her back into school when I'm a director of instruction. Instead, my priority was going to work and getting paid and all these other necessities that our family really needed. So I think it's really important for us to not think through the lens of parents don't care, because that was the farthest from the truth with Sarah. Of course, I care about her as my daughter. And I think it's really easy for us to fall into that trap when we see, well, they haven't shown up for this meeting 3 times. Well, they might have been going to the pawn shop because they were needing to keep their electricity on. So we don't always know the story that they have, and they need to trust us to be their teammate, to work alongside and make sure that we can get them the resources that I know Bonnie has talked through. So it was a great experience.
I was also in Sarah's family, and I just want you to know I happened to be in school the day that she went over and talked to that educator. And she said to that educator, I want my daughter back in school. You didn't follow protocol. In Iowa, we need to have an expulsion meeting. If you're going to expel my daughter, I need to have a meeting, and I need to be there. And we need to be talking about this. You just don't send her home and tell. She was really good. So thanks, Mom.
He was very agreeable. He wasn't
Thanks,
going to
Mom.
put up a
Yeah, he
fight.
was.
Oh, my goodness.
Theron, anything you want to add?
Yeah, Shauna and I also did the big picture workshop, and which everybody heard sort of the story there with the keynote too. It was kind of repetitive, but it reminded, I think, both of us quite a bit of the approach, the unique approach that we take at Morristown Learning Academy for students that maybe don't fit into the traditional school setting for one reason or another. So it was a lot about creating learning around student passions, student interests, project-based learning, not so much about online learning, but that might be incorporated into it too. But a lot about those students all participated in multiple internships, especially as they got older in high school, which is a lot of what we've been trying to promote with our work-based learning across the high school. So I thought that was interesting as well, but it made us feel good about the type of opportunities that we provide at MLA for students there. And then I too went to the Greene County thing, which is a nice, unique thing that works for them. And I've seen other examples of other programs on how career-based learning that's supported significantly by the business community can be infused either into the school or as part of the school through a separate program and that sort of thing. So there were great opportunities. I was disappointed there weren't more people there. I really thought, especially with it being the first time ISB had tried that, but I think that may have been indicative of just how busy a time of year it is for people to get away to.
Well, the only other thing I would add, Waterloo Schools had a good session on student behavior and mental health. And one of the things they talked about that they're doing or have done was adding, I don't know what they call them, but
Highlighters?
yeah, they call them highlighters because they wear yellow shirts, but it's similar to the positions that we've added at Miller and at the high school under shifting Eric, and then the two positions we've added under Eric. So I thought that was interesting. They have them in, I think, most of their buildings, it sounded like. They have a different,
Elementary, I don't think.
I don't know if they had them in the elementaries, but if they did, they had a different role than they do at the secondary, middle school, secondary level.
They actually talked quite a bit about they have shifted because they haven't been able to find certified staff, like they've struggled with some of the certified roles. They've shifted a bunch of job descriptions to non-certified roles to take load off of any certified load or role so that they can, and found kind of creative ways to use community members and non-certified staff in, this was one of those
And that was one of the
examples.
ways they did it.
The other one they were talking about, like for the counselors, they have someone that's doing all the scheduling and all the, like,
Yes.
so that counselors were only meeting with students and that was their only responsibility.
Yeah, it was a really, I mean, of all the sessions, that was the one that was the most interesting to me, was the Waterloo schools, that one. And just my one takeaway from the poverty simulation is just, like, I really had to think through the trade-offs for every single decision that I make. I don't have to think, in my life, I have to think about very few of the trade-offs that I'm making, right? But I had to really think through every decision had multiple trade-offs that I was making or giving up by making that decision. And that was just the incredible value of time, right? Like, I spent a lot of time just sitting, waiting when I couldn't do anything else, right? And it was frustrating. So, that's all. I had a no good son.
I would have to echo that you were not a good parent.
Fair enough, I got home.
You're very slow to react. We couldn't pawn our stuff because everybody else did.
Yeah, I got home and I told my wife, I said, I failed. And it was, that is how I felt. It was stressful and I felt like I failed the whole thing.
And what was interesting, we went through that. I think your concern is food, right? And I know you got us food, but reality is we weren't going to have a place to live. You know, we weren't quick on our feet. You know, we're someone else that get quick desperate to figure out what their needs are right now.
When we finished that experience, we did some reflecting as a total group, and it was interesting the comments that multiple people made about their mind shift that happened during that time, and maybe a little bit of crooked thinking that they normally would not be processing, but because we're in this situation and it's a dire situation. We were all put in dire situations with our economics and what we had available to our family. And it was interesting that I never would do this of who I am, my person today, in my everyday life. I would never think this or do this, but that thought crossed my mind. And, you know, how can I provide for my family? Because that's where it was. So I think patience and flexibility and understanding and providing grace to all of our families, especially when we don't know what they're going through, because it's frustrating. It was real frustrating, so. We became different people.
I had to play the role of a disabled grandfather who was raising their grandkids. And so most of the time I just sat because I couldn't do anything. And I started getting frustrated because, you know, I'm telling my spouse, you know, what they need to do, you know, and they're struggling. And then eventually, eventually I was able to get mobile towards the end, and I got sent over to social services, and I think Zach or someone said it. I mean, I learned real quickly how frustrating, that whole experience, if you're not sure exactly who you need to talk to and what you need to do, and then something doesn't go quite right. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was and I had gone through that a similar simulation before, but I thought it was just a great reminder of, if you haven't walked in someone's shoes, it's hard to know exactly, what they're going through. And some things like the child missing school on the surface seem like a really big deal to us, but when you know the context between what might be behind it, and that's what we need to do, is make those personal connections, build those relationships, and try to figure out how we can help people help themselves. So
Even in our family, we were taking our expelled sister and said, go get a job. Don't worry about
Yeah, we
school,
were
go
kind
get
of
a job.
happy that she could go get a job.
Exactly.
By week 4, I realized I shouldn't be happy about this, but at the time, it was a way to get ahead, so those are the realities.
Our thinking changes.
Okay. Well, let's take 5 minutes and then we'll go into closed session.
And there's some cake for you guys, so someone needs to break the ice on the cake.
I wish I didn't. I really wanted to go, but we were doing media testing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. Were we supposed to send it?